The Mafia kingpin had only one rule. No family was ever allowed to set foot inside his mansion. Marcus Blackwood, a name that made the entire city tremble. 8 years ago, a bomb stole his hearing, but it did not steal his power. He built his empire in absolute silence. No wife, no children, no one was permitted to bring the warmth of family into his cold world. Until that night, Grace Sullivan, the new housekeeper, 27 years old, pale blue eyes filled with fear, made a deadly mistake. She brought her 10-month-old son into Marcus's dining room. The nanny had canceled at the last minute. She had no other choice. Marcus looked at her with eyes as cold as ice. He raised his hand in a single gesture, sharp and merciless. "Get out!" Grace turned away, tears shimmering. But the baby, Noah, looked straight at Marcus and smiled. Then that tiny hand moved. Slowly, precisely. It pressed against his chest, then reached outward. Safe. Marcus froze. The glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. Red wine, spread like blood. That sign, he had invented it himself. It was not found in any book of sign language. Only 5 people in the world knew what it meant, and a 10-month-old child had just used it perfectly. It could not be a coincidence. In Marcus's world, when the impossible happens, it is never an accident. It is a message, a warning, or a weapon. But he was wrong. This child was not an enemy's weapon. He was a miracle Marcus had never dared to ask for. A light in 8 years of darkness. A voice in Marcus's silent world. And when his enemies discovered that, when they came to claim the child as an asset, Marcus Blackwood made the craziest decision of his life. He was willing to burn his entire empire to the ground, to abandon everything he had built over 10 years, to make himself the enemy of the entire underworld, just so no one could lay a hand on them. Because sometimes, family is not blood. It is the one who truly sees you when the whole world hears only silence. If you want to know what changed the heart of the coldest mafia kingpin in the city, leave a like for this story. Share it with the people you love, because sometimes people need to be reminded that love can come from the most unexpected place. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss stories like this that touch the heart. Marcus stepped over the shards of broken glass. Red wine soaked into the soles of his leather shoes. But he did not care. His eyes stayed locked on the child in the trembling housekeeper's arms. Each step carried him closer. 2 meters. 1 meter. 90 centimeters. Grace backed up until her spine met the wall. She held Noah tight against her chest, her whole body shaking like a leaf. She thought this was the last moment of her life. She thought the mafia boss would snap her neck right here, on this cold marble floor, surrounded by the smell of wine and the glittering light of the chandelier. But Marcus did not look at her. He looked only at Noah. And Noah looked back at him with dark eyes, fearless. That 10-month-old child seemed to know something the rest of the world did not. Then Noah did something that nearly brought Marcus to his knees. That tiny hand moved again. A fist rose to the temple, then turned slightly. Protect. Marcus had to grip the edge of the dining table to keep his balance. That sign. He had created it 5 years earlier, after the second failed assassination attempt. It did not exist in any sign language dictionary anywhere in the world. It was a code shared only between him and his closest inner circle. It meant, watch closely, be careful, danger is coming. And a child who could not even walk yet had just used it as if it were his native language. Marcus's hand trembled as he pulled out his phone. He typed a message, fingers stiff against the screen. Security team to the dining room. Immediately. Bring recording equipment. 47 seconds later, Derek Coleman appeared in the doorway with 3 bodyguards. They looked at the scene in front of them and did not understand what was happening. Their boss stood in the middle of the room, face gone pale, eyes fixed on a baby in the arms of a housekeeper who was crying without a sound. Derek moved closer, his hand already touching the grip of his gun. But Marcus raised a hand, signaling him to stop. There was no threat here. Or maybe there was. Marcus did not know anymore. For the first time in 8 years, he did not know. He typed a new message to Derek. Record everything. Every movement the child makes. 24/7. I want cameras in their room. I want to know what he does when he sleeps, when he's awake, when he eats. All of it. Derek read the message, his eyebrows lifting. He looked at the child, looked at the housekeeper, then looked back at Marcus. In 10 years of working for Marcus Blackwood, Derek had never seen his boss like this. Confused, uneasy, and perhaps afraid. He nodded and motioned for his team to begin. Grace did not understand the hand signals they exchanged. She only knew that suddenly cameras were carried in. Someone started taking notes, and prying eyes watched from every direction. She tried to open her mouth to say something, to beg, to explain. But no sound came out. Tears slid down her cheeks. Marcus finally looked at her. He took out his phone and typed a single line, then held the screen toward her. "You and the child will stay here. You will not leave the mansion. You will not contact anyone. Not until I understand what is happening." Grace read those words and felt her legs go weak, as if they might give out. Stay, in the mafia boss's mansion, not allowed to leave. Was it a death sentence or protection? She did not know. She only knew her son had just done something that made the most powerful man in this city tremble. And somehow, that was even more terrifying than death. Noah squirmed in her arms, turned his head back to look at Marcus one last time as she was escorted out of the dining room. The child lifted his hand and gave a small wave in Marcus's direction. Then he signed again. Safe. As if he were reassuring Marcus. As if he were telling him that everything would be all right. Marcus stood there, in the middle of the vast dining room with 22 empty chairs, watching them disappear beyond the door. And for the first time in 8 years of silence, he wished he could hear. He wished he could hear that child's laughter, that mother's sobs, the sound of his own heart hammering wildly inside his chest. But he could not. He could only watch. And what he had just seen changed everything. Grace sat on the narrow bed in the servants' quarters, her back against the wall, her eyes fixed on the closed oak door. Noah had fallen asleep in her arms 2 hours earlier, but she did not dare lay him down. She did not dare close her eyes. She waited, for heavy footsteps in the hallway, for the door to be kicked open, for a bullet to tear through her skull. She had lived long enough to know that people like her did not get happy endings. Life had taught her that lesson early. Grace Sullivan had been orphaned at the age of 6. A car accident had taken both her mother and father on the same rainy night. She did not remember much about them anymore, only the scent of her mother's perfume and her father's laughter in faint, blurred dreams. After the funeral, she was placed into the foster care system. The first home had a man who drank too much, and a woman who always looked away. The second home had too many children and not enough food. The third home had beatings in the middle of the night and bruises she had to hide under long sleeves. She learned how to stay quiet. She learned how to disappear. She learned how to exist without truly living. At 19, she was pushed out of the system. Too old to be protected, too young to know how to survive. She slept in a park all summer that year, ate leftovers from dumpsters behind restaurants, bathed in public restrooms. She took whatever work she could find just to make it through the day. Cleaning, washing dishes, waiting tables. Nothing was steady. Nothing was safe. Then she met him. The man who promised her a roof over her head. The man who vanished the moment she told him she was pregnant. She was not surprised. She was used to being abandoned, but this time was different. This time she was not alone. She had Noah, and she would do anything to make sure her son did not have to live the life she had lived. A soft knock at the door made Grace flinch. She clutched Noah tighter, her heart pounding. The door opened, and an older woman stepped inside, silver hair pinned up, a butler's uniform neatly pressed, a face without expression, but eyes that were not cold. Grace recognized her. Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper of the estate, the woman who had interviewed her 2 weeks earlier. Mrs. Patterson closed the door behind her and moved closer to the bed. She said nothing for a long while, only looked at Grace and the sleeping child. Then she spoke, her voice low and even. "You have made everything complicated." Grace opened her mouth to say something, but Mrs. Patterson lifted a hand to stop her. "I did not come here to accuse you. I came here to warn you. Mr. Blackwood is dangerous. This entire city knows that. But he is not cruel without reason. In 15 years of working for him, I have never seen him kill an innocent person." She paused, her gaze drilling into Grace. "But I have also never seen him react the way he did tonight. Your child did something that frightened him. And when Marcus Blackwood is afraid, everything becomes unpredictable." Grace swallowed. "I do not know what my son did. I swear it. I do not understand." Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. "I believe you. But that does not matter. What matters is that you cooperate. Do everything he asks. Do not run. Do not lie. And maybe, just maybe, you and your child will survive this." She stood up, about to leave, then stopped at the door. "Oh, one more thing." She pointed toward the corner of the ceiling. Grace followed her gesture, and her heart nearly stopped. A tiny red dot, almost invisible, blinked in the darkness. A camera. They were watching. Mrs. Patterson opened the door and stepped out, leaving Grace alone with her sleeping child and the unseen gaze of the man holding her life in his hands. Grace looked up at the camera, then down at Noah. She did not cry. She had cried too much in her life already. Instead, she held her son closer, and whispered into Noah's ear, words she was not sure anyone could hear. "Mom will protect you, no matter what it costs." Marcus's private office was drowned in darkness. Only the pale blue glow from multiple computer screens washed over his face, carving his features into something sharp, as if cut from stone. The clock on the wall read 3 a.m, but Marcus had no intention of sleeping. He could not sleep. Not because of caffeine, or because of a mafia boss's habit of staying up late, but because of the footage playing on repeat on the screen in front of him. The 47th time. He had counted. With each viewing, he discovered something new. The way that tiny hand moved with a precision no 10-month-old child should possess. The way those fingers curved at exactly the right angle, the right position, the right rhythm. The way those dark eyes focused on him with an intensity even adults rarely carried. Marcus zoomed in on Noah's hand, enlarging it down to the pixel. He compared it to video of himself making the same sign. Identical. Perfectly identical. Not a random imitation. Not a lucky coincidence. This was flawless replication of a language that did not exist in any record. He zoomed in on Noah's eyes, stared into those jet-black pupils, looking straight into the camera as if the child knew Marcus would replay this moment. And in those eyes, he saw something so familiar it made his skin crawl. Focus. Observation. Understanding far beyond the child's age. He had seen that look before. In the mirror. Every day for the past 8 years. Marcus shoved his chair back and crossed to the filing cabinet in the corner. He opened the bottom drawer, where the documents were kept that he never wanted to see again. His own medical file, from 8 years ago. After the bombing, he flipped through the yellowed pages, the scrawled medical handwriting. Most of it was about his hearing, about irreversible damage, about the fact that he would never hear again. But there was one section he had never truly read closely. Not until now. Post-traumatic neurological assessment. The patient exhibits significant neural reorganization following the loss of hearing. The auditory cortex shows decreased activity, but there is a notable compensatory increase in regions associated with visual and sensory processing. The patient demonstrates heightened sensitivity to peripheral motion, facial expressions, and nonverbal communication cues. Visual processing speed is approximately 40% higher than normal baseline. This is a classic example of the brain's adaptive response, rerouting resources from the lost sense to the remaining senses. Marcus read that paragraph again and again. His brain had rewired itself, restructured itself. It had turned him into someone who could read others with his eyes alone, see what ordinary people could not see, understand what ordinary people could not understand. That was how he had survived the past 8 years. That was how he had built an empire in silence. And now, a 10-month-old child was showing the same kind of ability. No, not just the same, maybe stronger, because it had taken Marcus years to develop this ability after the injury, and Noah seemed to have been born with it, as if the child's brain had been designed to see the world the way Marcus saw it, as if someone had made him that way. The thought sent a cold line down Marcus's spine. He turned back to his desk, pulled out his phone, and typed a message to Derek. "Contact Dr. Harrison. Tell him to come here tomorrow morning. As early as possible. This is top priority." He set the phone down and stared back at the screen, where Noah's face was frozen in a single frame. The child was smiling. An innocent smile. The smile of an ordinary baby. But Marcus knew nothing about this was ordinary. In his world, when the impossible happened, it was always a sign of something bigger. A conspiracy. A trap. An enemy hiding in the dark. He had survived 3 assassination attempts and 2 family wars by never trusting coincidence, by always searching for the threat before it found him. But tonight, as he looked into the child's eyes on the screen, Marcus Blackwood felt something he had not felt in 8 years. Fear. Not fear of death. Not fear of enemies. But fear that this child was not a threat at all. Fear that he was something Marcus did not dare believe. Fear that after 8 years of loneliness, for the first time, someone was truly seeing him. Dr. Harrison arrived at the estate at 8 a.m, exactly as Marcus had demanded. He was a man in his 60s, thin, with snow-white hair and the sharp eyes of a scientist. He was one of 3 doctors Marcus trusted, mostly because Marcus held every secret the man wanted buried. The medical clinic was located in the east wing of the mansion, originally designed for emergencies, but now it would serve another purpose. Marcus stood behind the one-way glass, watching everything unfold inside. Grace sat in a chair in the corner, her hands clenched together, her pale blue eyes full of worry and never leaving her son. Noah was placed on the examination table and, surprisingly, the child was completely calm. No crying, no fussing, only watching everything around him with a strange, unwavering focus. Dr. Harrison began with basic tests. Reflexes. He tapped Noah's knee lightly with a rubber hammer, The child's leg kicked out, perfectly normal. Vision. He moved a small flashlight back and forth in front of Noah's eyes. The pupils constricted and widened properly. The eyes tracked the light smoothly. Hearing. He clapped behind Noah's back. The child turned his head immediately. No problems. Everything was normal, a healthy 10-month-old, developing on schedule. But Marcus knew that was not what he was looking for. He typed a message to Dr. Harrison on his phone. Signed to him. Any sign. Dr. Harrison read the message, his eyebrows lifting in confusion, but he did not ask questions. He had learned sign language years ago when Marcus lost his hearing, and he used it fluently. He turned back to Noah and raised his hands, signing a simple word. Hello. Noah stared at his hands intently. Then the child's tiny hand lifted and copied the movement perfectly. Hello. Grace's mouth fell open. She had never taught her son sign language. She did not even know sign language. Dr. Harrison glanced toward the one-way glass, where he knew Marcus was standing, then continued. He signed faster this time. Happy. Noah watched, his small face tightening for a moment as if concentrating. Then his hand moved. The motion was still clumsy because a baby's motor control was not fully developed, but the sign itself was completely correct. Happy. Dr. Harrison kept signing, a string of basic words. Eat, sleep, mother, baby. Noah copied each one with increasing accuracy, not mindless mimicry. The child was learning in real time, watching and reproducing at an unbelievable speed. Marcus felt his heart hammer faster behind the glass. He typed the next message. Nonsense signs. Random gestures that mean nothing. Dr. Harrison gave a slight nod and began moving his hands in completely random ways, waving up and down, rotating his wrist, folding fingers in a messy sequence, gestures that carried no meaning in any sign language. Noah watched, but this time, the child did not copy. Instead, Noah's face showed confusion, even a faint irritation. The child knew those gestures did not mean anything. He was not only copying, he understood. Marcus gripped the edge of the table in front of him. This was not an ordinary baby who happened to be good at imitation. This was a child who could distinguish meaningful communication from meaningless movement. At 10 months old, that could not happen. The neural pathways for that kind of recognition typically did not develop until at least 12 to 15 months, often much later. Dr. Harrison seemed to realize it too. He looked toward the one-way glass again, and his expression shifted from skepticism to pure astonishment. Then he did something Marcus did not expect. He signed a question to Noah, slowly and clearly. Where is safe? Noah tilted his head, as if thinking about the question. Then the child turned on the examination table, jet black eyes sweeping the room, past his mother, past the doctor, past the medical equipment, and then he stopped. Noah's small hand lifted, index finger pointing straight at the one-way glass, pointing straight at where Marcus stood, pointing at him. Grace followed the direction of her son's hand, confused, because she saw only a mirror. But Noah was not looking at the mirror. Noah looked through it. He saw the man standing on the other side. Then the child signed, the same gesture he had made last night in the dining room. Safe. Marcus felt his legs threaten to give out. Technically, the child should only have seen his own reflection in the mirror like glass. But Noah's eyes didn't focus on the surface. They focused on the subtle thermal shift and the micro-vibrations of a human presence behind the pane. He didn't just see with light. He perceived the world through the very neural energy Marcus thought he had hidden. But somehow, he did. Somehow, he sensed Marcus's presence. Somehow, out of everyone in this room and in this entire mansion, that 10-month-old child had chosen him. The deaf mafia boss, the killer, the lonely man, and called him safe. Dr. Harrison slowly rose to his feet, his eyes never leaving Noah. He looked toward the one-way glass and signed a single sentence, knowing Marcus was reading every movement. We need to talk. Right now. Marcus's office was silent as a tomb. Dr. Harrison sat across from him, both hands resting on his thighs, his face carrying a gravity Marcus had never seen in all the years they had known each other. He began to sign slowly, each movement weighted by what he was about to say. This child is not copying. He understands. Marcus did not react. He waited. Dr. Harrison continued, his hands moving with the precision of a man who had communicated with Marcus for many years. I have worked with hundreds of children in my career. I have seen intelligent children, early developers, children with special abilities, but I have never seen anything like this. He paused, as if searching for a way to say what could not be said. Noah's visual processing ability is beyond any child I have ever met, beyond most adults. He does not only see, he reads. He reads gestures, reads intention, reads emotion, reads even what people try to hide, and he can tell the difference. When I sign something meaningful, he learns. When I sign something meaningless, he knows it is meaningless and refuses to copy it. Marcus remembered that moment in the clinic. The way Noah frowned when Dr. Harrison waved his hands at random. The way the child looked at him with something close to irritation, as if he were saying, "Do not waste my time with trash." Dr. Harrison signed on. There are recorded cases of children developing superior visual ability, especially those born to deaf parents. They develop greater sensitivity to nonverbal cues, to facial expressions, to body movement. But this is an entirely different level. He looked straight into Marcus's eyes. It is as if his brain was designed to see the world the way you do. Marcus felt as if someone had just driven a fist into his chest. Designed, the word echoed in his skull. Not random, not natural. Designed. Dr. Harrison continued. Have you read your own medical file yet? The section about neural reorganization after losing your hearing. Marcus nodded. Last night, your brain rewired itself to compensate for the hearing you lost. Enhanced visual processing, heightened sensitivity to movement, to body language, to everything the eyes can capture. That is how you exist. That is how you read people even though you cannot hear what they are saying. Dr. Harrison leaned forward. Noah has a similar ability, but not because of trauma, not because of loss. He was born this way, as if someone optimized his neural pathways before he ever entered the world. Marcus sat motionless. His mind was processing at a brutal speed, connecting pieces into a single shape. Noah was not a weapon sent to take him down. Noah was not a spy, not a trap, not a scheme from an enemy. Noah was kin, the only one in this world who saw the world the way Marcus saw it. That was why the child recognized him instantly. That was why he used Marcus's language as if it were his native tongue. That was why he pointed at Marcus and signed safe. Because in Noah's eyes, Marcus was not a terrifying mafia boss. He was someone like him, someone who understood him, someone who spoke the same silent language. Neurological kinship, a kinship of the nervous system. Two brains structured in the same way, recognizing each other through countless microsignals ordinary people could not perceive. Dr. Harrison stood, preparing to leave. But before he stepped out the door, he turned back and signed one more thing. If I am right about the source of this ability, if someone truly interfered with the child's neurological development before he was born, then you need to find out who did it, and why. The door closed behind the doctor. Marcus sat alone in his office, staring into nothing. 8 years. 8 years living in silence, building an empire, killing, ruling, and always being alone. Alone in a crowd, alone in his own home, alone in every conversation made of hands that no one truly understood. And now, a 10-month-old child had seen through all of it. Seen him. Truly seen him. For the first time in 8 years, Marcus Blackwood felt that he was not alone. The next night, Marcus Blackwood did something he had not done once in the past 8 years. He broke his own routine. At 7:47 in the evening, the time he always ate alone in the vast dining room with 22 empty chairs. But today, when he walked in, there was a new chair, a child's high chair, placed right beside his seat at the head of the table. Derek had looked at him with confusion when he received the order. Marcus did not explain. He did not need to explain to anyone. He simply typed a message to Mrs. Patterson, telling her to bring Grace and Noah to the dining room at 7:30. And now he stood there, staring at that small chair, wondering what he was doing. The door opened. Grace entered with Noah in her arms, her face as pale as it had been 2 nights ago. She was still afraid. Of course she was afraid. She was walking into the lair of a mafia boss, not knowing whether she had been invited to dinner or whether she was the dinner. But Noah was different. The child looked around the room with bright, eager eyes, as if this were the most fascinating place he had ever seen. Then those black eyes found Marcus, and Noah began to squirm in his mother's arms, reaching toward him. His mouth making happy sounds Marcus could not hear but could see on the tiny lips opening and closing. Marcus motioned for Grace to come closer. She hesitated, but in the end, she stepped forward. He pointed at the high chair, giving the order with his eyes. Put him down here. Grace lowered her gaze and placed Noah into the chair. The child wobbled slightly, tiny hands gripping the edge of the table to steady himself. But he was not afraid. He looked at Marcus with anticipation, as if waiting for something wonderful to happen. Marcus sat in his own chair, less than an arm's length from Noah, closer than anyone had been allowed to sit beside him in 8 years. He signaled for Grace to sit across from him. She sat down like a puppet yanked by invisible strings, back rigid, eyes not daring to meet his. Dinner was served. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, green vegetables. A smaller portion for Noah, the food cut finely. Marcus did not eat. He only watched. Grace lifted the spoon, feeding Noah a little at a time, her hand shaking so badly food spilled. But Noah did not care about the food. The child kept turning toward Marcus, watching him, as if waiting for him to do something. Finally, Marcus placed his hand flat on the table, fingers spread. It was a sign, one of his private signs, meaning, "Show me your position." Noah studied his hand carefully, then set his tiny hand on the table and copied the motion perfectly. Grace stopped breathing. Marcus raised his hand and signed a single word. "Who?" Noah tilted his head, jet black eyes staring at him without blinking. Then the child signed, slowly, one movement at a time, as if weighing each word. "Alone." Then another sign. "Together." "Alone." "Together." Marcus felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. This child was describing them, describing both of them. Two lonely souls, finding each other in this world. Two people who belonged nowhere, and yet somehow belonged to each other. Grace was crying. Marcus could see tears sliding down her cheeks, but she did not dare wipe them away, did not dare move, did not dare do anything that might shatter this moment. Noah reached for Marcus, tiny fingers closing around his index finger. Marcus's hand was rough, scarred, a hand that had strangled people, that had pulled a trigger, that had done things too terrible to speak aloud. But that small hand held it as if it were the most precious thing in the world, as if it were safety, as if it were home. Noah signed with his other hand, clumsy because his motor control was not fully developed, but the meaning was unmistakable. Home. Marcus did not move, did not breathe, could not think. 8 years. 8 years he had built this mansion, turning it into a fortress, into a symbol of power, into a place people feared. But it had never been home. It was only a building, a hollow shell, a tomb he had locked himself inside. He had forgotten what home was, forgotten the feeling of belonging somewhere, forgotten what it felt like for someone to truly want to be near him, not out of fear, not for money, not for power, but because they saw him, truly saw him. And this child, 10 months old, not yet walking, not yet speaking, had found what Marcus had lost 8 years earlier, had given him what he did not dare ask for, had looked at the coldest mafia boss in the city and seen a lonely man who needed to be loved. Marcus felt something inside him collapsing. The walls he had built for 8 years, the armor he put on every day, the lies he told himself, that he needed no one, wanted no one, deserved no one. All of it was crumbling, and he did not know whether to be afraid or grateful. Noah tightened his grip on Marcus's finger, as if he knew what Marcus was thinking. Then the child signed again, repeating it like a promise. Home, home, home. Marcus looked down at the tiny hand holding his, then looked up into Noah's face. The child was smiling, the carefree smile of a baby who knew nothing about the dark world his mother had accidentally stepped into. Or maybe he did. Maybe he knew everything and still chose to be here. Still chose Marcus. And that was the most frightening thing Marcus had ever faced. Because for the first time in his life, he had something to lose. After dinner, Marcus led Grace to the small parlor in the west wing of the mansion. Noah had fallen asleep in his mother's arms, his tiny hand still clutching a fold of Grace's sleeve as though afraid she might vanish. Marcus seated himself across from them in a leather armchair, far enough away not to threaten but close enough to read her lips in the dim light. He pulled out his phone, typed a single line, and turned the screen toward Grace. "Tell me. Everything. From the beginning." Grace looked at the words, then up at Marcus's expressionless face. She knew this was no invitation. This was a command. And in his world, disobedience meant death. She drew a long, deep breath and began to speak. Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to enunciate clearly, knowing he was reading every movement of her lips. "I was orphaned at 6 years old. A car accident. My parents died the same night. I was placed into the foster care system." She paused, swallowing hard. The memories she had tried to bury for so many years were now rising to the surface, as sharp and painful as they had been on the very first day. The first home had a foster father who was an alcoholic. He beat me whenever he was drunk. The foster mother knew but did nothing. The second home was too crowded. There was never enough food. I had to fight 5 other children for every piece of bread. The third home. Her voice caught in her throat. She looked down at Noah sleeping, as if his presence could give her the strength to continue. In the third home, I was sexually abused. For 2 years. From the age of 12 until I was 14. I never dared tell anyone. I did not think anyone would believe me. Marcus did not react. His face remained cold as stone. But his eyes, if Grace had looked more closely, she would have seen something in them. Not pity. Marcus Blackwood pitied no one. but perhaps it was understanding. Recognition. He too knew what suffering meant. She continued, her voice flat and even, as though reciting her own death sentence. At 19, I aged out of the system and lived on the streets for a grueling year. For the next 6 years, I drifted from one dead-end job to another, barely keeping a roof over my head while trying to outrun my past. It wasn't until I was 26 that I met him, the man who promised me a home, only to vanish the moment he realized I was pregnant. Promised to give me a home. I was foolish enough to believe his promises. When I told him I was pregnant, he disappeared, as if I had never existed. Tears began to stream down her cheeks, but she did not wipe them away. She let them fall, one by one, like fragments of her life spilling out. I decided to keep the baby. I do not know why. Maybe because I wanted someone who belonged to me. Maybe because I wanted to do better than what had been done to me. But then there were complications. Bleeding. Pain. The doctors said I would lose the baby without specialized treatment. Grace looked at Marcus, her pale blue eyes brimming with tears. Then a man approached me at the hospital. He said he represented a research foundation. They would pay for everything. All the treatment. All the tests. If I agreed to participate in some kind of study, prenatal neurodevelopment, he said. Advanced treatment that would ensure my baby would be healthy. Her voice turned bitter. I was desperate. I agreed. They took me to a medical facility in Nevada. 2 months. They injected me with drugs, ran tests constantly, monitored everything. They said it was all normal, all safe. She looked down at Noah, her voice breaking apart. But when Noah was born, he was different. He looked at things differently. He tracked movement before other babies even knew how to focus. The doctors said it was a good thing. Superior development, they said. They called it a success. She began to sob openly, her shoulders shaking. I do not know what they did to my child. I do not understand. I only wanted him to live. I only wanted him to be healthy. I did not know what they were turning him into. Marcus looked at her, then at the sleeping child, then typed on his phone. Medical records. Do you have them? Grace nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I stole them before I escaped from the facility. I do not understand most of what is written in them. All medical terminology. But I knew they were important. I have hidden them for the past 10 months. Marcus typed again. Where? Grace looked down at the diaper bag beside her feet, the one she carried everywhere, never letting it out of her sight. In here. There is a hidden compartment at the bottom. I have kept them there since the day Noah was born. I did not know who I could trust. I did not know if they were looking for me. I only knew that if they wanted my child back, these records might be the only thing that could protect him. She looked straight into Marcus's eyes. There was something new in her voice now. No longer just fear, but defiance. The fierce resolve of a mother willing to do anything for her child. I do not know what you want from us. I do not know why you are keeping us here. But if you intend to harm my child, you will have to kill me first. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he typed one final message. Give me the records. I will find out what they did. The black sedan appeared outside the estate gates at 11:23 the next morning. Marcus was in his office, reading the medical file Grace had handed him the night before, when Derek burst in without knocking. The head of security looked taut, the tension plain in his face, his hand already resting on the grip of his gun. He signed quickly, every motion sharp and clipped, like a battlefield report. A strange car at the gate. No license plates, no appointment. The driver refuses to identify himself. Marcus rose and walked to the security monitor mounted on the wall. He enlarged the image from the gate camera. The glossy black sedan sat about 20 meters from the gate, its windows so dark they swallowed the light and offered nothing back. The plate was smeared with mud, deliberately obscured. They wanted him to know they were hiding their identity. That, in itself, was a message. The driver's side window lowered, slowly, as if the car were breathing. A face appeared. A man in his 40s, square-jawed, a long scar running from temple to chin. Cold eyes stared straight into the camera, as though he knew exactly where Marcus stood, and exactly what Marcus was doing. Marcus recognized him at once. Anthony Moretti's driver. The Moretti family controlled the docks, running the largest smuggling operation on the East Coast. They had maintained an unspoken arrangement with Marcus for 3 years, because neither side wanted to gamble on an all-out war. But Anthony Moretti was ambitious, hungry, always searching for a chance to expand his territory. And now his driver was sitting at Marcus's front gate. Marcus typed a message to the gate security team. Search the car. If it is clean, bring him through the South Service entrance, alone. 15 minutes later, the driver was escorted into a windowless room in the basement. He sat with the ease of someone in a social call, a half smile never leaving his scarred face. Marcus entered with Derek. He did not sit. He stood across from the driver, close enough to read his lips, far enough to react to any sudden movement. The driver took out his phone, typed slowly, then turned the screen toward Marcus. He knows you are deaf. He knows how to communicate. He came prepared. Mr. Moretti sends his regards. He heard you have special guests in your house, a woman and a child. It was an unusual interest from a man who never broke his own rules. Marcus showed no reaction. He waited. The driver typed again. Everyone is curious. The Morelli family sends their greetings. The Castellano family is watching your gate. Everyone wants to know what Marcus Blackwood is protecting. Because whatever you protect is worth taking. Marcus took out his own phone and typed a single word. Leave. The driver did not move. He typed another line, and the smile on his mouth widened, uglier now, more poisonous. Cute baby. Black eyes. It would be a shame if something happened to him. Marcus moved before Derek could react. His hand shot out, clamped around the driver's throat, tightened, lifted him out of the chair, and slammed him into the wall. Once, twice. The driver clawed at Marcus's hand, his face shifting from red to purple, his eyes rolling back, his mouth opening in a desperate attempt to inhale. But no air could get in. Marcus could not hear the ragged gasps. He could not hear bone and skull striking the wall. But he felt it. He felt the pulse beneath his palm weakening. He felt life slipping out of the man, little by little, and he did not want to stop. Derek put a hand on Marcus's shoulder, squeezing hard. With his other hand, he signed, "Not yet. We need to know what they know." Marcus looked into the driver's eyes and saw pure fear there. Good. He wanted him afraid. He wanted all of them afraid. He loosened his grip and let the driver slide down onto the floor. The man coughed and choked, dragging in each breath as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Marcus took the driver's phone, typed a message, and tossed it down beside him. "Go back and tell Moretti. This is personal. Anyone who touches my house will not get the chance to return. Not even the messenger." The driver scrambled to his feet. His face was still dark with bruised color. Marcus's handprint burned red into his throat. He glanced at the message, then ran for the door as if something inhuman were on his heels. Marcus stood there, watching the man vanish beyond the closing door. Derek stepped up beside him and signed slowly. "They know about the child. They know you care." Marcus nodded, his jaw grinding tight. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Because in this world, when a mafia boss has something to lose, his enemies do not stop until they have taken it. That afternoon, Mrs. Patterson knocked on Marcus's office door with a strain in her face he rarely saw. She had worked for him for 15 years, had witnessed things that would haunt other people for the rest of their lives. But Marcus had never seen her hands shake the way they did now. She placed a small object on his desk. A cheap phone, the kind meant to be disposable, sold in convenience stores for a few $dozen. The screen was cracked, the plastic casing scuffed, but a small indicator light still blinked red in the corner. It was active. Mrs. Patterson signed slowly, each motion carrying its own quiet urgency. "I found it in the staff quarters assigned to Miss Sullivan. It was hidden deep behind the wardrobe, planted long before she arrived. It is recording. Transmitting somewhere?" Marcus picked up the phone and checked it. A professional-grade recording application. The kind ordinary people never even knew existed. It was streaming data to an encrypted server, the IP address hopping through dozens of proxies across 4 continents. Untraceable. Someone highly skilled had set this device up. He checked the battery history. The phone had been running continuously for nearly 3 weeks. Grace had been at the estate for 4 days. That meant the phone had been planted before she ever set foot here, before she was hired, before anyone could have known she would be assigned to this room. Marcus set the phone down, his mind moving at a brutal speed, snapping the pieces together. Grace was not the target of surveillance. The room was. Someone had known in advance that Grace would be there. Someone had arranged everything. He typed a message to Derek. "Check every employee with access to the servants' quarters. Bank accounts, texts, calls, everything. I want to know who went into that room during the past 3 weeks." 3 hours later, Derek returned with a folder. He set it on Marcus's desk and signed, his expression tight with disgust. "Elena. Housekeeping. Worked for us 5 years." Marcus opened the file. "Elena Rodriguez, 32 years old. A clean record. Strong performance reviews. No sign of anything unusual throughout her employment. Until 2 weeks ago." Derek pointed to a bank statement. "She received $10,000 from an anonymous account. The money moved through 3 different banks, one in the Caymans, one in Switzerland, one in Singapore. Impossible to trace the source. Marcus stared at the figures on the page. $10,000. Enough for a cleaner to betray her employer. Enough for someone to buy an eye inside his estate. He typed a message. Where is Elena? Derek signed. Held in the basement. Waiting for your orders. Marcus nodded. But he did not rush. He needed to think. Someone had planted a spy in his house. Someone had known Grace would come. Someone had arranged for her to be placed in the room, already fitted with a listening device. What did that mean? He flipped back through Grace's hiring paperwork. She had applied for the job 3 weeks ago, at the exact time the phone was planted. She had been hired a week after that. She had been assigned to the room that already contained the device. It was all too perfect. Grace was not a spy. Marcus knew that. He had looked into her eyes, had read the real fear in every movement she made. She knew nothing about this plot, but she was part of it. She and Noah had been brought here on purpose, guided into his estate like pieces on someone else's chessboard. The question was who, and why? Marcus looked out the window, where darkness was beginning to settle over the garden. Moretti knew about Noah. Moretti had sent a man to threaten him, and now Marcus had discovered that someone had been planning this before Grace ever arrived. It was all connected. It all pointed in one direction. He needed answers. And he would start with Elena. Elena confessed everything in under 20 minutes in the interrogation room beneath the basement. She was not a brave woman. And Marcus did not need to lay a hand on her. The sheer force of his presence, the cold gaze that seemed to look straight through her, was enough to make her tremble as she spilled it all. A man had approached her at the supermarket near her home. He had handed her cash and told her to plant a phone in the room meant for new staff. He promised there would be more money if she reported every movement inside the estate. She did not know who he was. She did not know why. She only knew that $10,000 was more than she earned in 6 months of work. Marcus did not need to hear anything else. He signaled Derek to handle it and left the basement, his mind already shifting to the next step. The estate was no longer safe. If there was one spy, there could be more. If they had been monitoring Grace's room, they could be monitoring other places. He needed to get Grace and Noah out of here. Immediately. He called Derek up to his office as soon as the work in the basement was done. The head of security appeared with a strained expression, his hand still smeared with a bit of blood he had not yet had time to wash off. Marcus typed a message and held it out for him to read. Move Grace and Noah to the safe house. Tonight. Morrison Street. Derek read it, his eyes widening. He signed fast, every movement edged with protest. That is your private place. The last plan. The place no one knows except you and me. If you take them there, you are declaring they belong to you. Everyone will know. Marcus looked at Derek. His face did not change, but his eyes said everything. They already know. Derek stood still for a moment, as if he were swallowing what had just happened. In 10 years of working together, he had never seen Marcus like this, never seen his boss place anyone above the Empire. But he did not ask for more. He nodded and left to prepare. An hour later, Marcus stood in the hallway of the servants' wing, watching Grace pack the few things she owned. She did not have much, just a few changes of clothes, Noah's diaper bag, and the medical records she had hidden for 10 months. When Derek told her she had to leave, she panicked. Her hands shook, things slipped and scattered, and tears hovered at the edge of her lashes. She thought they were going to kill her, thought this was how they dealt with people who knew too much. Marcus stepped into the room. Grace went rigid when she saw him, clutching Noah to her chest as if it might be the last time she would ever hold her child. Marcus took out his phone and typed slowly, making sure she could read every word. You will not be harmed. I am protecting you and Noah. Where you are going will be safe. No one knows except me and Derek. Trust me. Grace read the message, her pale blue eyes full of doubt. Why? She asked, her voice rough. Why are you doing all of this for us? Marcus did not know how to answer that question. He was not sure he understood why himself. He only knew that when he thought of someone hurting Noah, hurting Grace, something inside him ignited with a fury he had never felt before. He did not type anything else. He only looked at her, hoping she could read the answer in his eyes. Noah stirred in his mother's arms and turned his head to look at Marcus. The child was not afraid. He had never been afraid of him. And now, while his mother trembled, while it felt as if the whole world were falling apart, Noah looked at Marcus with calm, ink-black eyes and signed, safe. Then he signed a second word, protect. Then he signed a third, a new sign Marcus had never seen Noah use before. Tomorrow. It was not a question, not a request. It was a promise from a 10-month-old baby that they would see each other again. That this was not goodbye, that tomorrow, and the day after, and many days beyond that, they would still be together. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He nodded once, slowly, as if he were signing the most sacred contract he had ever signed. Tomorrow, he signed back. The promise was exchanged, in silence, between a mafia boss and an infant, two lonely souls who had found each other in the dark. Marcus turned away and walked out of the room. He did not look back. He could not look back. Because if he looked back, he was afraid he would not be able to let them go. The message arrived at 2 a.m, while Marcus sat alone in his office, rereading Noah's medical file for what felt like the 100th time. His phone vibrated. The screen showed a strange number. No name, no information. He opened the message, and his heart seemed to stop. A video, and a short, blunt line of text. "I think you should watch this." Marcus pressed play, and his world tipped over again. The image shook, as if it had been captured by a low-quality security camera. A room bleached white, cold fluorescent light. Medical equipment lined up along the walls, and on the hospital bed in the center, a woman lay there. Grace, 2 years younger, her hair longer, her face thinner, her belly swollen high with the child not yet born. She was crying. A man in a white lab coat stood beside the bed, a syringe in his hand. He said something Marcus could not hear, but Marcus could read the man's lips. "This is the last dose. After you give birth, you will be free." Grace nodded, her eyes closing as the needle slid into her arm. She did not see the man's smile, the smile of someone who knew what the victim did not know, the smile of someone who had just completed an experiment. The video ended. Marcus sat motionless, the light from the screen spilling across his darkened face. Another message arrived immediately after. "She thinks she escaped. In truth, I let her go. To see how the child develops in a real environment. She is a lab rat, Blackwood, and the baby is the product, the most successful product I have ever made. And now, I want my product back." Marcus read those words once, twice, 3 times. Each time, the rage in him rose higher, hotter, darker, until it felt like it might boil through his skin. He opened Noah's medical file, flipped to pages he had not studied closely, pages packed with medical terminology he did not understand. But he understood numbers. He understood names. He understood the small line at the bottom of the page, under research funding. Moretti Medical Foundation. Anthony Moretti did not only know about Noah. He had funded the clinic. He had paid for the research. He had designed the prenatal neural intervention program. He had chosen Grace as a test subject because she was poor, because she was alone, because she was desperate, because she would agree to anything to save the child inside her. Anthony Moretti had created Noah. Marcus stood so abruptly the office chair rolled back and struck the wall. He went to the window and stared into the night blanketing the garden, both hands clenched into fists. Everything made sense now. The recording phone planted before Grace arrived. Elena bought off to watch. Moretti's driver showing up at the gate to threaten him. All of it was part of a plan. Moretti had let Grace go the way someone releases a bird with a tracking chip. Let her fly. Let her believe she was free. While he tracked her every step, tracked Noah growing, tracked the child's unusual abilities as they unfolded. And when the product was ripe enough, he came to collect. Marcus thought of Grace, a woman who had endured a lifetime of suffering, who had believed she had finally escaped, only to learn she had never truly been free. She was only a lab rat permitted to run in a larger cage. He thought of Noah, the child with eyes so black they seemed to see through his soul, the child who had signed, safe, and home, and tomorrow with absolute trust. The child was not a miracle. The child was the product of science, of ambition, of a man who saw human beings as tools to use and discard. But did that change anything? Marcus asked himself. Did Noah's origin change what Marcus felt when he looked into the child's eyes? Did it change the way Noah held his hand? The way Noah smiled at him? The way Noah saw him when the rest of the world saw only a terrifying mafia boss? No, nothing changed. Noah was still Noah, still the first child who had ever made Marcus feel he was not alone. And Moretti, the man who believed he could own a child the way he owned merchandise, would soon learn that there were things money could not buy. There were things power could not seize. There were things that, once Marcus Blackwood decided to protect them, would be protected at any cost. He took out his phone and typed a message to Derek. Increase security at the safe house. Double the number of men. No one in or out except the approved list. And prepare everything. We are about to have a war. Marcus arrived at the safe house just as dawn began to show, driving alone to ensure no tail followed him. After verifying the perimeter and seeing Grace settled, he returned to the main estate to coordinate with Derek on the inevitable fallout. By 2 a.m., he was back in his office, monitoring the feeds with Derek standing by for his command. They had dismissed the rest of the security detail to ensure absolute secrecy, leaving only his most trusted shadow at his side. The apartment sat inside an aging building in the most forgotten part of the city, where the police rarely patrolled and neighbors never asked questions. From the outside, it looked like a ruin, but inside there were steel-reinforced walls, bullet-resistant windows, and the most advanced security system money could buy. 4 guards nodded as he stepped through the door. They did not ask. They did not speak. They only did their job. Grace was sitting on the sofa when he came in, Noah sleeping in a portable crib beside her. She had not slept. Marcus could see it in the dark circles under her eyes, in the way her shoulders sagged with exhaustion. But when she saw him, she still stood, survival instinct stronger than fatigue. Marcus lifted a hand, signaling her to sit. He pulled a chair across from her and set a tablet on the table between them. He did not know any way to say this gently. He was not good at gentle. He was only good at truth, even when the truth was cruel. He played the video and slid the tablet toward Grace. She stared at the screen, her pale blue eyes widening as recognition hit her. She recognized the room. She recognized herself on the hospital bed, belly swollen high, eyes red from crying. She recognized the needle going into her arm. No. The word left her as a whisper, her voice no more than breath. No, no, no. The video ended. Grace looked up at Marcus, her face white as paper. He showed her Moretti's messages. Every word, every line. Lab rat. Product. I want my product back. When she finished reading, the tablet slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a flat, lifeless sound. She sat there, staring into nothing, as if her soul had stepped out of her body. They were watching me? Her voice trembled, breaking apart. All this time? I thought I got away. I thought I protected my baby. But they watched everything? Marcus nodded. He had no words to comfort her. He did not know how to comfort anyone. My baby. Grace looked toward the crib, where Noah still slept peacefully, unaware of the storm ripping through his mother's heart. My baby is an experiment? He is not my baby? He is their product? Tears began to slide down her cheeks, but she did not make a sound. She cried in silence, as if even her pain did not deserve to be heard. Marcus took out his phone and typed. He typed slowly, weighing every word, because these might have been the most important words he had ever written. He is your child. He grew inside you. You gave birth to him. You have raised him for 10 months. You love him. He loves you. They may have done something to his body, but they did not create your love for him. They did not create the person he is becoming. He is your child, Grace. The rest does not matter. Grace read the lines, her lips moving with each word. Then she cried, truly cried, no longer silent. Her sobs broke open like a dam giving way, like every pain she had held back for so many years finally finding a path out. The sound woke Noah. The baby shifted in the crib, then pushed himself upright, black eyes searching the room for his mother. When he saw Grace crying, Noah did not cry the way ordinary babies did. Instead, he crawled out of the crib, slow but determined, and made his way toward her. Grace did not realize he was coming until a tiny hand touched her face. Noah stood on his mother's lap, both small hands cupping Grace's cheeks, wiping her tears with clumsy fingers. Then he signed, "Safe." Then he signed again, "Mama." Then he repeated it, "Safe. Mama, safe." As if he were telling Grace that it was all right. "Mama is safe. I am here. Everything will be all right." Grace pulled him tight against her and wept into Noah's soft hair. She cried for the brutal truth she had just learned. She cried for the years of being watched without knowing. She cried because her child was the product of a mad experiment. But she also cried with gratitude, because no matter how Noah had come to her, he was still her child. Still the best thing that had ever happened to her. Still the reason she kept living. Marcus stood there, watching mother and child cling to each other, and he felt something in his chest draw tight. He had no family, no one to hold, no one to cry with, but looking at them, he understood why he had to protect them. Because this was what he did not have, and he would not let anyone take it from them. 2 a.m. Marcus sat in his office at the estate, eyes locked on the laptop screen showing the camera feeds from the safe house. He had not slept for 2 days, caffeine and anxiety keeping him upright. Grace and Noah were safe inside the guarded apartment, 4 men on the exterior, 2 on the roof. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Then he saw it. A small movement in the corner of the screen, on the roof of the building across from the safe house. He zoomed in, his heart beating faster. 2 black shapes moved along the rooftop, quick and precise as cats. Black clothes, black masks, and something glinting in their hands under the thin moonlight. Weapons. Professional. Not street thugs. Not amateur muscle. These were trained killers. Marcus snatched up his phone and typed a message to the safe house security team. Threat on the roof of the building across. 2 targets. Highest alert. He did not wait for a reply. He was already out the door, sprinting down the corridor, down the stairs, into the parking area where Derek was waiting. The head of security did not need to ask. One look at Marcus's face was enough. Derek threw himself into the driver's seat, Marcus into the passenger seat, and the car tore out of the estate gates before they had even opened all the way. 90 miles an hour on empty night roads. Marcus stared at the tablet, tracking the camera feeds, his chest tightening with every beat. The 2 black shapes had moved from the opposite building to the roof above the safe house. They did not go for the door. They did not go for the windows. They were doing something on the roof surface. Marcus zoomed in, trying to make out details through the grainy night camera, and then he understood. Explosives. They were not going to rush in through a door like ordinary attackers. They were deploying precision-shaped charges on the roof. They weren't trying to level the building. They were surgically cutting a path to drop directly into the bedroom and snatch the child before the smoke cleared. The vibration Marcus felt wasn't just a blast. It was the rhythmic thud of professional kinetic breaching, designed to paralyze the guards while keeping the asset intact. An explosion designed with enough concussive force to blow the interior reinforced doors off their hinges and incapacitate anyone inside, yet precisely calibrated to leave the primary floor supports intact. It was a high-stakes surgical strike meant to paralyze the defense, not bury the prize under rubble. Grace. Noah. Marcus stared at the tablet, willing it to light up, willing the signal to return, willing himself to see Grace run out of the wreckage with Noah in her arms. But the screen stayed dark. Still no signal. Only the words "no signal" blinking, over and over, like a taunt. Derek slammed harder on the gas, the car roaring. The speedometer climbed past 100 miles an hour. The roadside became smeared streaks of dim light. Marcus did not look at the road. He looked at the tablet, his fingers tapping nonstop as he sent messages to the guards, to Grace, to anyone who might answer. No one answered. Silence. Absolute silence. For Marcus, silence had always been normal. 8 years living in a world without sound had taught him to accept it. But tonight, silence was the enemy. Silence meant no information, no update, not knowing whether Grace was alive or dead, not knowing whether Noah was hurt or crying under rubble, not knowing anything at all. The car flew through empty streets, ran red lights, cut corners at speeds that made the tires shriek. Marcus did not care. He cared about one thing: getting to the safe house, finding them, and if they were alive, he would never let this happen again. If they were dead, he would burn this entire underworld to ash, one man at a time, starting with Anthony Moretti. The car turned onto the final street, and Marcus saw it. Black smoke billowed from the 3rd floor of the building. Flames surged through shattered window frames. The fire department had not arrived yet. The street was still empty. Marcus opened the car door before Derek had fully stopped. He threw himself out, sprinting toward the burning building. He was not afraid of fire. He was not afraid of death. He was afraid of one thing only: arriving too late. Marcus charged into the building like a feral animal. The front doors had been blown off their hinges, thick black smoke pouring out from inside. He did not wait for Derek, did not wait for anyone. He only ran, cutting through the wreckage in the lobby, taking the stairs 3 steps at a time, lungs burning from the smoke. But he did not slow. The 3rd floor, where Grace and Noah's apartment was, where their lives might have ended minutes ago. He kicked open the 3rd floor stairwell door and stepped into hell. The smoke was so dense he could barely see. Severed electrical wires dangled from the ceiling, throwing sparks whenever they brushed together. The walls were split with cracks. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, and in the middle of the hallway a body lay motionless in a pool of blood. Johnson, one of the 4 men assigned to protect Grace and Noah, dead. Marcus stepped over him. There was no time for grief. He had to find them. He had to find Grace and Noah. He had to know whether they were alive. The apartment door had been blown away. Inside, it was worse. A gaping hole, nearly 2 meters across, had been punched straight through the floor in the center of the living room. That was where the explosives had detonated. That was how the attackers had intended to enter. From the roof straight down, striking from the one direction no one would expect. The living room was shattered. The sofa was charred black. Glass was everywhere. And blood. A trail of blood led from the living room toward the bedroom. Marcus drew his gun and followed the trail, his heart hammering wild inside his chest. Whose blood was it? Grace's? Noah's? Or the enemy's? He did not know. He only followed the dark red smear across the scorched wooden floor. The bedroom door was shut. Marcus grabbed the knob and twisted. Locked from the inside. Someone was in there. Someone was alive. He stepped back, then drove his boot into the door with all his strength. Once, the door shuddered but held. Twice, the wood began to split. 3 times, the door blew inward, and Marcus surged in with his gun raised, ready to shoot anyone who threatened the people he had to protect. What he saw froze him for a fraction of a second. Grace sat braced in the corner, back against the wall, face drained pale, blood flowing from her left shoulder and soaking her shirt red. She held Noah tight against her body, using herself as a shield for her child. Her pale blue eyes were wide with fear, fixed not on Marcus, but on the man standing in the middle of the room. Jake, the youngest guard on the team, 23 years old, working for Marcus for less than a year. He was aiming a gun at Grace and Noah, finger on the trigger, ready to squeeze at any moment. When he heard the door explode open, Jake turned. His mouth opened, saying something Marcus could not hear. Maybe an explanation, maybe an apology, maybe an attempt to lie, to claim he was protecting them instead of threatening them. Marcus did not care. He only saw the gun aimed at Noah, and he did not need to hear another word. 1 shot, 1 single bullet. Jake dropped. A hole between his eyebrows, eyes still wide, staring at the ceiling, dead before he hit the floor. Marcus stepped over the body without hesitation and went to Grace and Noah. He dropped to his knees in front of them, his gaze sweeping quickly over both of them, assessing injuries. Grace was wounded in the shoulder, shrapnel embedded, bleeding heavily but not fatal. Noah was crying, a sound Marcus could not hear but could see in the way the baby's mouth opened, in the way his chest rose and fell, in the tears sliding down his cheeks. But there was no wound, no blood. Noah was not hurt. Marcus released a breath he had not realized he was holding. He reached out, about to check Grace's injury, but Noah was faster. The baby leaned out of his mother's arms, tiny hands reaching for Marcus. Marcus took Noah into his arms by instinct, feeling the small, warm body shaking against him. Noah wrapped his arms around Marcus's neck, pressed his face into Marcus's shoulder, tears soaking into Marcus's shirt. Then a small hand lifted, touched Marcus's face, fingers still trembling after fear wiped away the dust and soot on his cheek. And Noah signed. Slow, unsteady, but clear, safe. Marcus closed his eyes and held the child tighter. He did not cry. He had not cried in years, but in that ruined room, with the traitor's body at his feet, with the wounded woman staring at him with eyes no longer filled with fear but with gratitude, with the child in his arms telling him that he was safe, Marcus felt something break open inside his chest. Not pain, but something he had forgotten a long time ago. Something like hope. Derek appeared in the bedroom doorway a few minutes later, his face blackened with smoke, his clothes torn and stained with blood, but he was still standing. He looked at Jake's body on the floor, looked at Grace as Marcus wrapped her wound with strips torn from the bedsheet, then signed with a grim expression. The attackers got away. Both of them. Professionals. They set the explosives, waited for the blast, then withdrew before we could react. No traces left. Marcus nodded, not surprised. Moretti did not hire amateurs. He hired the best. Ghosts who could kill and disappear as if they had never existed. That they escaped was exactly what he had expected. Derek signed again. Johnson is dead. Martinez is badly wounded, being taken for emergency care. Jake was the insider. He locked Grace and Noah in the bedroom, waiting for the attackers to arrive. If you had not come in time, he did not finish. He did not need to. Marcus knew that if he had arrived even a few minutes later, Grace and Noah would have been in enemy hands, or worse, dead. He looked down at Noah in his arms. The baby had stopped crying, but still clung to Marcus's shirt as if afraid Marcus might disappear. The child had been through hell tonight, had seen fire, had heard the explosion, had watched his mother bleed, had watched a man aim a gun at him, but he was still here, still alive, still looking at Marcus with ink-black eyes full of trust. Marcus looked at Grace. She was trembling, not from cold, but from shock. The wound on her shoulder had been wrapped, but blood still seeped through the cloth. She needed medical care. She needed rest. She needed to feel safe for the first time in her life. Marcus had killed tonight, killed Jake without hesitation, and he would kill again if he had to. He would kill anyone who threatened the child in his arms, and the woman looking at him now with eyes no longer full of fear, but full of trust. But he could not keep running. He could not keep living in the shadows, waiting for the next strike, counting down to the next time someone tried to kill the people he wanted to protect. Moretti would not stop. He had invested too much in Noah, saw the child as property, as a product, as something that belonged to him. He would keep sending men. He would keep finding ways. He would never give up until he got what he wanted, unless Marcus ended it. Once, and for all time. Marcus signed to Derek, each motion slow and final. We leave the city, tonight, all three of us. Derek frowned. Where? The house by the sea, the last plan. Derek's eyes widened. He knew the place. He was the only person besides Marcus who knew about the hidden house on the cliff overlooking the Pacific. The one Marcus had bought 6 years ago under a false name, prepared for the day everything collapsed. It was the final escape plan, a refuge when there was nowhere else left, a way out of this life, out of this empire, out of everything Marcus had built. Derek signed, his manner grave even without sound. If you use it, you cannot come back. Everyone will know you ran. The empire you built for 10 years will be torn apart. You will lose everything. Marcus looked at Derek, then down at Noah, already starting to drift to sleep in his arms, then at Grace, fighting to keep herself from passing out from blood loss. 10 years. 10 years building an empire from nothing. 10 years climbing to the top of the underworld, becoming a name that made people tremble. 10 years of killing, of avoiding being killed, of living in darkness and loneliness. And all he had to do to keep it was let Grace and Noah go. Let them disappear. Let them become someone else, somewhere else, with nothing to do with him. He could do that. He should do that. That was what a smart mafia boss would do. But Marcus did not want to be smart anymore. He wanted to do what was right. For the first time in his life. I know. He signed back, his face still expressionless, but his eyes saying everything. Get the car ready. We leave in 1 hour. And call a meeting with all the families. I have something to settle before I disappear. Grace and Noah were taken to another safe house, one no one knew about except Derek, while Marcus returned to the estate to prepare for the next step. He sat in his office, the safe in front of him, the one he had not opened in years. A 16-digit code, a fingerprint scan, retinal recognition, 3 layers of security for the most valuable thing he possessed. Not money, not weapons, information. The safe door swung open. Inside were dozens of hard drives, USBs, and thick folders of paperwork. 10 years of collecting, 10 years of patience, placing people into every corner of the underworld, listening, watching, recording, 10 years of building a weapon no one knew he held. Marcus took the first hard drive and plugged it into his laptop. The Moretti family. The file appeared on the screen, and he scrolled through page after page. A photo of Anthony Moretti holding a woman who was not his wife in a 5-star hotel in Miami. A recording of a phone call in which he ordered the killing of a business rival 3 years earlier. Evidence of dirty money being laundered through a chain of restaurants he owned. And most important, documents about the clinic in Nevada, about experiments on pregnant women, about children born as products of a mad ambition. He moved on to the next drive, the Castellano family. A photo of the boss shaking hands with a federal official he had bought. A recording of a meeting discussing weapons smuggling across the Mexico border. A list of police officers receiving monthly bribes. The Morelli family, the Chen family, the Volkov family, drive by drive, file by file, secret by secret. Marcus opened them and looked again. Unsolved murders, illegal deals that could make the FBI throw a celebration, personal scandals that could destroy marriages, reputations, and the lives of men who believed themselves untouchable. He had everything. He always had, and tonight, he would use it. Marcus began composing messages, one by one, for each family. To Moretti, he attached photos of the clinic documents with a short line. I know what you did. I know what you created. If you want this kept secret, come meet me. To Castellano, he sent the recording of the meeting with the federal official, along with a message. The FBI will love this, unless you would rather talk first. To Morelli, Chen, Volkov, each received a separate message, each with proof of their crimes, each carrying the quiet threat that Marcus could ruin them whenever he chose. Derek stood behind Marcus, watching him work, his face tightening with more and more worry. When Marcus sent the final message, Derek stepped forward and signed. You are declaring war on everyone, every family in the city, all at once. This is suicide. Marcus turned to the head of security, his face strangely calm. No, I am stopping a war by threatening all of them at the same time. If I threaten only Moretti, the others will jump in to fight over what is left. But if I show them all that I can destroy them, no one will dare touch me, or the people I protect. Derek went quiet for a moment, then signed again. And if they call it a bluff? If they do not believe you will expose all of this? Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkness spread over the city. The empire he had built over 10 years lay out there in every direction, and he was about to abandon it all. That was not a bluff. He signed without turning back. I will do it. If any one of them touches Grace or Noah, I will release everything. Even if it means destroying myself. Derek did not sign anything else. He knew Marcus was not joking. He had never seen his boss willing to trade everything like this, and that both frightened him and filled him with a hard respect. Marcus typed the final message, sending it to all 5 families at once. St. Michael Church, the eastern suburbs, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Come alone, or with one escort. We need to talk about the future, and about what I am willing to trade for peace. He hit send and set the phone down. It was done. There was no road back. Tomorrow, he would face the 5 most powerful families in the city. Men who had wanted him dead, men who had tried to kidnap Noah, men who treated human beings like property, and he would make an offer they could not refuse, or he would burn everything down with himself. St. Michael Church stood like a ghost in the barren suburbs. Half its dome had collapsed. The stained glass windows were shattered, leaving only rusted iron frames behind. Rotten wooden pews sat in crooked rows inside what had once been sacred space. Morning light slipped through holes in the walls, laying down alternating bands of brightness and shadow. A picture of decay. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, alone as he had promised. He stood where the altar used to be, his back to a headless statue of Christ, eyes fixed on the main doors. He carried no weapon, no Derek, only himself, and the phone in his jacket pocket, connected to a system that could destroy every family in this church with a single press of a button. They came one by one. Castellano first, the gray-haired old man with the eyes of a fox, taking a seat on the second pew to the left. Then Morelli, the only woman among the 5 bosses, cold and calculating. Chen and Volkov arrived together, nodding to each other before choosing seats on opposite sides. And last, Anthony Moretti. He entered the church as if it were his kingdom, steps confident, a half-smile never leaving his handsome but ruthless face. He sat in the front pew, directly in front of Marcus, legs crossed, one hand resting on the edge of the seat as if he had come to watch an interesting show. 5 families, 5 representatives, a total of 20 bodyguards waiting outside as agreed. And Marcus Blackwood stood alone before them all, his face expressionless, carved from stone. He took out his phone and opened a text-to-speech application, letting the device speak for him so the ones who did not know sign language could hear. Thank you for coming. I will be brief. I want to leave this game, permanently. A murmur rose in the space that had been silent. Castellano and Morelli exchanged looks. Chen frowned. Volkov sat a little straighter. Only Moretti kept smiling, as if he had known this was coming. Marcus typed again, letting the machine read. I am offering to hand over all of my territory. The downtown to Castellano, the south docks to Morelli, the transport routes to Chen, the financial network to Volkov, and the legitimate operations to Moretti. Everything. I keep nothing. Silence fell over the church. For the first time, the most powerful mafia bosses in the city did not know what to say. Marcus Blackwood, the man who had built an empire with his bare hands, the man who never backed down from anyone, was offering them all of it. Moretti was the first to speak, his voice echoing in the empty shell. In exchange for what? Because I am sure you are not doing this out of kindness. Marcus looked straight into his eyes and typed. In exchange for permanent safety for Grace Sullivan and her son, Noah. No pursuit, no searching, never touch them. From anyone in this room, Moretti laughed, the sound bouncing through the abandoned church like the cry of a crow. You want to trade 10 years of building an empire for a maid and a child? Are you insane, Blackwood? Marcus did not flinch. He typed again. The child you created in a laboratory. The child you call a product. The child you sent assassins to take last night. Moretti's smile faded, but did not fully disappear. That child is my property. I invested in it. I made it. It belongs to me. Marcus stepped forward, leaving the altar space, closing the distance by 1 step. He did not type into the phone again. Instead, he signed, slow and clear, knowing that at least Moretti understood this language, because he had studied Marcus for years. He is a child, not property, not a product, not something to buy and sell. He is human, and you will never touch him. Moretti rose and stepped closer, meeting Marcus head-on, the distance between them only a few paces now. 2 bosses facing each other, one with the anger of a man challenged, one with the calm of a man who had already decided he was willing to die. You are willing to give up 10 years for a woman and her child? Moretti said, contempt thick in his voice. Give up everything you built? Give up power? Give up the fear the whole city has for you? All for a child who is not even your blood? Marcus looked into Moretti's eyes. He did not need the phone. He did not need the artificial voice. He only needed his mouth to form a single word, so clear that even someone who had never read lips could understand it. Yes. Moretti went still. The entire church fell so silent that the wind moving through the broken roof could be heard. Marcus did not step back, did not blink, did not waver. He had made his choice, and he would not change it. Morelli broke the silence, her voice sharp as a blade. An interesting offer, Blackwood, but how do we know you will keep your word? How do we know you will not come back and demand what you gave away? Marcus turned to her, pulled out his phone, and typed, because I have something that guarantees you will keep your word. And you will see it right now. Marcus pressed a button on his phone. At the same time, every phone in the abandoned church vibrated. Castellano, Morelli, Chen, Volkov, Moretti. All at once, as if an invisible hand had just knocked on the most private doors of their lives. Each of them pulled out a phone and looked down at the screen, and one by one their faces changed. Castellano went pale when he saw the photograph of himself shaking hands with the bribed federal official. Morelli bared her teeth when she read the recorded transcript of the meeting about weapons smuggling. Chen's hand clenched tight when he saw the list of police officers taking monthly bribes from his organization. Volkov studied the proof of money laundering through an underground banking system with eyes cold as ice. And Moretti, when he saw the documents about the clinic in Nevada, about experiments on pregnant women, about children created like products, the smile on his mouth disappeared completely. Marcus typed into his phone, letting the machine speak so they could all hear. This is insurance. 10 years of collecting. Every secret of every family. Every sin you want buried. It is all here, and it is all set to be released automatically. If anything happens to me, to Grace, or to Noah. He paused, letting them absorb it, then continued. If there is any accident, any disappearance, any mysterious illness, the system will automatically send everything to the FBI, to the press, to your rivals. It will all collapse. Every family, every empire. No one escapes. Silence settled over the church. A heavy, suffocating silence, full of calculation. 5 of the most powerful minds in the underworld were processing, weighing choices, searching for an exit. Moretti spoke first, his voice no longer contemptuous, but tightly restrained anger. If you release those, you go down with us. Your secrets are in there too. Your empire will be exposed too. You will lose everything. Marcus looked him straight in the eyes and typed, I have already fallen. I have nothing left to lose. You have a wife, children, a reputation to protect. You have things to lose. I do not. I have only 2 people, and I will burn the whole world if anyone touches them. Moretti's jaw tightened, his fist clenched at his side. He wanted to hit Marcus in the face. He wanted to draw a gun and end it right here. But he could not, because if Marcus died, the system would trigger, and everything he had built would collapse. Castellano stood first, his body old but his eyes still sharp. He walked to Marcus, studied him for a long moment, then held out his hand. Deal, he said. The child and his mother are not the Castellano family's concern. We will not touch them. Marcus shook his hand. Deal. Morelli rose next, her high heels clicking on broken stone. She did not say much, only nodded and offered her hand. Marcus shook it. Then Chen, the quietest man in the group, did not speak either. Only looked at Marcus with a new respect Marcus had never seen before. Volkov shook hard enough that it almost hurt, as if he wanted to test whether Marcus would flinch. Marcus did not flinch. Only Moretti remained. He still stood by the front pew, eyes on Marcus with something that was not anger anymore. Maybe acceptance. Maybe curiosity. Maybe a reluctant respect for a worthy enemy. He stepped forward and stopped in front of Marcus, the 2 of them facing each other like predators taking a final measure. You have changed, Blackwood, Moretti said, his voice low and thoughtful. The Marcus Blackwood I knew would never give up power for anyone, would never let emotion control his decisions, would never place a woman and a child above his empire. Marcus looked at him and typed one last time in this meeting, that Marcus Blackwood is dead. Dead from the night a child looked into his eyes and signed the word safe. Dead from the moment he realized there was something more important than power. Dead from the moment he found what he lost 8 years ago. Home. Moretti read the words, stayed silent for a long moment, then held out his hand. Deal, Blackwood. The child is yours. I will not try to take him back again. But you should know, he was meant to become something extraordinary. Marcus clasped his hand, held tight, then let go. He will become something extraordinary, he typed. Just not in the way you want. He turned and walked away, leaving 5 mafia bosses standing in the abandoned church, watching his back disappear through the doorway. And for the first time in 10 years, Marcus Blackwood felt free. 3 months later, the house by the sea was no longer a desolate ruin. The walls had been repainted a warm, creamy white. New pale blue curtains fluttered in the ocean breeze. The front garden, once choked with weeds, had become neat beds of leafy greens, ripe red tomatoes, and wildflowers in every color. Life had returned to what had once been the final plan for the end of the world. Marcus stood in the kitchen, a knife in his hand, slicing vegetables with a precision that once belonged to far darker work. The smell of food simmering spread through the house, blending with salt air and the faint sweetness of flowers from the garden. He no longer wore the severe black suit, just a wrinkled shirt and old jeans, the shape of an ordinary man making dinner for his family. Grace stepped into the kitchen, her long brown hair tied back neatly, her skin carrying healthy color instead of the pallor she had worn 3 months ago. The scar on her shoulder had healed, only a faint line now, a reminder of the nightmare night that had passed. But the greatest change was in her eyes. Those pale blue eyes that had once been full of fear, that had once been afraid to look anyone in the face, now shone with something she had believed she had lost forever. Hope, peace, and love. She came up beside Marcus and placed a gentle hand on his back so he would know she was there. He turned, and they exchanged a smile, the kind that needed no words, no sound, only understanding. Tiny footsteps came from the living room. Noah appeared in the kitchen doorway, 13 months old now, walking steadily, his ink-black eyes bright as polished stones. When he saw Marcus, his whole face lit up. He ran toward him on unsteady legs, but with fierce determination, both arms lifted, asking to be picked up. Marcus set the knife down, bent, and lifted Noah, settling the child on his hip. Noah clung to his shirt and looked around the kitchen with the curiosity of a child discovering the world. Then he began to imitate. When Marcus reached for a spoon, Noah reached too. When Marcus tilted his head to study the pot of soup, Noah tilted his head at the exact same angle. When Marcus furrowed his brow in thought, Noah furrowed his brow too, his tiny face scrunching into something irresistibly adorable. Grace covered her mouth, laughing. "He copies everything you do," she said, knowing Marcus was reading her lips. "He walks like you, sits like you. He even frowns like you when he is thinking." Marcus looked down at the child in his arms, and something in his chest tightened. Noah was looking up at him with eyes full of love, admiration, and absolute trust. Then Noah signed, slowly, carefully, a new sign he had learned in the past few weeks. "Family." The little hand pointed to Grace. "Family," then pointed to Marcus. "Family," then pointed to himself. "Family." 3 people, 1 word, 1 meaning. Marcus closed his eyes for a second, feeling the weight of that word. Family, the thing he had once believed he did not need, the thing he had forbidden from entering his estate, the thing he had given up an empire to have. Evening fell, staining the sky orange and purple. The 3 of them sat on the porch, facing the sea. Marcus in an old armchair, Noah asleep on his chest after a day of playing. Grace sat beside him, her head resting on his shoulder, her eyes closing too in peace. There was no sound for Marcus. He had lived in silence for 8 years, but for the first time, silence was not the enemy, not loneliness, not a wall keeping him from the world. Silence now was the surf he felt through the vibration of the ground, the steady breathing of the child sleeping against his chest, the warmth of the woman leaning into his shoulder. Silence now was peace. Noah shifted in his sleep, his tiny hand moving out of habit. And even while dreaming, the child still signed. Safe, protect, home. Marcus looked down at the small hand, unconsciously shaping the words he had taught him, the words that defined their new life. He lifted his own hand, gentle enough not to wake Noah, and signed back. Always. Together. Forever. Grace opened her eyes and watched him sign, and she understood. She had learned his language over the past 3 months, 1 word at a time, so she could speak to him without a phone or paper. She raised her hand and signed the first sentence she had learned. Love. She pointed to Noah. Love. She pointed to Marcus. Family. Marcus looked at her, looked at the sleeping child, looked out at the sea where the sun was setting, and he understood that he had found what 10 years of building an empire could never bring him. He had found home. Our story ends here, but its message will echo on. Sometimes the most precious things come from where we least expect them. Sometimes people have to lose everything to realize what truly matters. Sometimes family is not blood, but the people who see you when the whole world sees only darkness. If this story touched your heart, Please leave a like and share it with the people you love. How do you feel about Marcus, Grace, and Noah's journey? What does this story make you think about in real life? Share your feelings in the comments. We truly want to hear the thoughts from deep in your heart. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more moving stories every day. We wish all of you watching this video good health, a happy life, and a spirit that is always at peace. Thank you for staying with us. Goodbye, and we will see you in the next video.